Erupted murmurs turned into disbelief. The judge struck his gavel twice. "Order! Order in this court!" But it was too late. The revelation had landed. This wasn't just a case of who did what behind closed doors. It was about how the walls were. Kept standing, how power moved silently. Protected by those who understood its language, the prosecutor's voice dropped to a near whisper. Ask yourself this: if someone like Kim Kardashian, with access to the best legal teams in the world, chose to never speak about what she saw, what does that say about what she saw? The judge recessed the court for lunch, but no one moved because nothing felt the same. A new name had been etched into the story, a name with reach, with trust, with global visibility. And now, with questions no PR statement could clean. Kim hadn't spoken in that room. But her silence had just become the loudest voice of the day. When court resumed after recess, the energy had shifted. The whispers were gone, replaced by something heavier. A silent reckoning. Everyone now understood. This wasn't about fame anymore. It was about how deep the roots of silence went. For the first time, the courtroom wasn't just dissecting Diddy's dark empire. It was cracking open the fortress that shielded it. And inside that fortress was one of the most recognizable names on earth, Kim Kardashian. The prosecution wasted no time. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "we now turn to Exhibit 318C, an internal FBI communication log confirming that Ms. Kardashian's private security was recorded in a confidential surveillance tape coordinating with Mr. Combs's team. During the 2020 Calabasas retreat, the screen flickered to life. Not a video, just text. A thread of messages from 2 secure phones. Diddy's assistant, Kay, is inbound. Clear her arrival with double pass. Kim's head of security, confirmed, she's briefed. East entrance, no lenses. Diddy's assistant, same seating, same NDA. Status, use level 2 suppression. A juror immediately scribbled that down. Level 2 suppression. It didn't sound like party planning. It sounded like military code. The prosecutor stepped forward. The FBI flagged this language. Level 2 was a known term in Mr. Combs's private protocol. It meant full blackout, no phones, no cameras. All guests briefed on legal consequences. If they spoke, she let that settle. This isn't guilt by association, she continued. This is evidence of intentional silence, a pattern of participation in an ecosystem of secrecy. The screen changed again. A single photo appeared, not scandalous, not even dramatic, but powerful. Kim Kardashian, dressed in muted tones, sat elegantly near a fire pit at one of Diddy's private estates. Around her, partially blurred, were 2 now indicted executives from Diddy's inner circle, both facing charges of coercion and witness suppression. In the background, a man, half obscured by flame, holding a phone pointed down. Recording. The prosecutor zoomed in. This image was taken at a gathering allegedly held under NDA blackout. But not everyone played by the rules. That phone, she said, belonged to a whistleblower. That whistleblower turned over 37 minutes of audio and video. Most of it muffled. But one conversation was isolated, Kim's voice included. Gasps echoed across the room. "We'll play the clip now," the prosecutor said. "Names have been redacted, but the content remains." The audio rolled. "Kim, you know how it works. We keep things quiet, it goes away. You just need to stay close. Stay useful, otherwise, people disappear." Male voice. "Disappear?" "Kim, not like that, just faded out of the loop." Reputation, silent treatment, trust me, I've seen it happen. A stillness fell over the courtroom. Not of awe, but of dread, because this wasn't hearsay. It wasn't coded. It was Kim Kardashian, not threatening, but explaining how silence is enforced, how reputations are managed, how people who ask too many questions vanish from the spotlight. The prosecutor paused the clip. She wasn't demanding, the prosecutor said. She wasn't yelling, she was validating, she was normalizing. She knew the rules. She had played the game. She looked to the jury. "We are not here to prosecute Kim Kardashian." But her voice, her silence, Her presence is no longer deniable. She didn't build the machine, but she oiled it perfectly. Even Diddy shifted because the celebrity armor that once made his empire untouchable was beginning to melt. Then came the final strike. We've also obtained financial audit records. The prosecutor added, showing that Ms. Kardashian's legal team paid $420,000 in early 2021 to settle a non-litigation conflict involving a former staff member of Mr. Combs. The payment? Labeled as Image Risk Mitigation Consulting Fee. The prosecutor paused, but there's no consulting firm registered under the recipient's name. There's only silence. The judge recessed for the evening, but the courtroom didn't empty. People lingered, not out of interest, out of disbelief. Because now, they weren't just watching Diddy fall, they were watching the people who kept him standing finally get pulled into the light. The next morning, the air in the courtroom was different. It wasn't just tension anymore. It was fear. What began as a trial against Sean Diddy Combs had evolved into a full-blown excavation of the elite circles that kept him safe. And yesterday, that excavation uncovered a name once considered untouchable, Kim Kardashian. And today, the prosecution made it clear they're not done. Another after-party, another hidden room, another layer of secrecy. This retreat had almost disappeared. Partially deleted CCTV footage recovered by forensic teams. The clips, redacted for identity protection, showed Ms. Kardashian entering through a private service entrance. Ushered into a zone labeled only as Zone 4, the projector lit up. A still image, Kim walking down a dim hallway, no red carpet, no paparazzi, no curated perfection. Just exposed drywall, shadows, and a woman at her side, later confirmed to be from Combs Enterprises, now disbanded. Guest management unit, the prosecutor's voice cut through the darkened room. This hallway was under renovation. Not open to guests, not part of the public-facing estate, but it kept appearing in staff emails, always referred to as the preferred site for off-grid networking. Next slide. An internal message, pulled from Diddy's team. KK confirmed. Needs to avoid press overlap. Push her through Zone 4, seat with legacy tier group, privacy flag, full. The phrase legacy tier hit the room like a cold gust. It didn't mean fame. It didn't mean money. It meant influence. The kind that doesn't trend. It controls. The prosecutor paused. Then came the moment we didn't expect. She turned to the screen again. In that same security feed, there was a brief 10-second audio sync. From a secondary ceiling mic inside Zone 4, the court held its breath. We'll play it now. The grainy audio crackled. Unknown male. She knows the format. Been briefed 3 times. Female voice, confirmed as Kim. I'm not new to this. I know how it works. I'm here to listen, not to leak. Then silence, but it was enough because the voice wasn't panicked. It wasn't hesitant. It was composed. Confident. She knew where she was, and she chose to be there. The prosecutor turned slowly to the jury. This is what systemic silence sounds like. Not fear, not coercion, but routine. She stepped forward. We have no proof Kim Kardashian committed a crime. But we do have logs, audio, security records, testimonies, evidence that she knowingly entered environments where criminal activity took place. She didn't choose silence out of fear. She chose it out of comfort, out of familiarity, out of normalization. Diddy's lawyer stood abruptly. Objection. This paints my client guilty by association. The judge didn't even hesitate. Your client is already on trial. This evidence speaks to the circle that kept him protected. And there it was again. Circle. Not friends, not entourage. A protected inner world of people who knew the rules so well they didn't need to be told. They simply arrived, played their part, and walked away. The prosecutor closed her binder. Kim Kardashian's name may never appear on an indictment, but history will remember that when she was offered a seat at a table built on silence and power, she sat down. The judge struck his gavel. Adjourned until tomorrow. And yet again, the courtroom didn't empty. People lingered. Not because they wanted more, but because they couldn't walk away from what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just a trial. It was an unmasking, a quiet truth unraveling before their eyes. Fame doesn't protect the innocent. It protects the system. And Kim, once the embodiment of calculated influence, was no longer a symbol. She was evidence. By the next session, the courtroom buzz was gone. What remained was raw tension. Unsettled, uncomfortable, what had begun as the trial of Sean Diddy Combs was now exposing the very network that helped him thrive in darkness. The prosecutor returned, this time holding a sealed flash drive. This was recovered, she said, from the personal encrypted storage of a private videographer employed by Combs Enterprises in early 2020. The content had been mislabeled, buried under fake file names. Unreleased until now. The judge nodded. Proceed. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. A luxurious living room appeared, dimly lit, soft jazz in the background, no parties. Just conversation. In the center, Diddy, Kim Kardashian. Two others. Identities blurred, the audio clicked into focus. Kim, I don't want footage. I don't want backlash. I'm not saying yes to anything unless we have full privacy terms locked. Diddy, you already signed the blanket NDA. Kim, NDAs mean nothing when people start leaking. I want it erased before I leave. Every angle, every mic. Diddy, it's not that serious. Kim, it is when your name gets tied to yours. The room froze. Your name gets tied to yours. Not fear of the unknown. Fear of being caught beside someone already drowning. The video cut. The prosecutor's voice was quiet, but razor sharp. This wasn't passive. This wasn't innocent attendance. This was strategy. This was someone fully aware of what they were walking into and negotiating how to walk out clean. She paused, and yet she stayed. The screen lit up one last time. Another short clip. Kim, laughing gently with one of the blurred figures. Then, clearly, everyone in this room knows the drill. If you're here, you're already protected. The prosecutor turned to the jury. Protected by what? From whom? This wasn't about paparazzi. This wasn't about media. This was about complicity. About a culture where being present meant playing along. Where silence wasn't the cost, it was the requirement. Then she turned to Diddy. The defendant surrounded himself with people who knew the game, who played the game, who protected the game. And when someone like Kim Kardashian walks in, demands blackout, and then tells others they're already protected, that is not ignorance. She turned back to the judge. That is systemic concealment. The judge didn't speak, neither did the jury, but in the silence that followed, everyone understood this wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about the fortress. And the ones who helped keep the lights off inside it. Sealed, August 14, 2021, settlement reached. August 15th, trust transfer. Initiated from KFT, August 16th, nonprofit dissolves. August 17th. Then the prosecutor dropped the line that shattered the illusion. The nonprofit was fake, not failed. Nah. Inactive, fake, it existed only on paper, no website. No grant history, no public programming, just one transaction. And a single traceable link to a crisis consultant tied to both Combs Enterprises and the Kardashian West brand office. The courtroom didn't erupt, it froze. The kind of stillness where speculation dies and evidence takes its place. The prosecutor stepped forward. Her voice steady, measured, unshakable. We are not saying Kim Kardashian orchestrated abuse, but we are now forced to admit she helped contain it. She didn't stop, she laid it bare. She funneled money through soft networks. She partnered with experts who bury noise, and most damning, she didn't walk away. Next slide. A private assistant's calendar recovered during unrelated discovery. Event title, Recharge Weekend Off-Grid Malibu date. 3 days blocked, access, clear all media. NDA level 3, the prosecutor leaned into the mic. Guess who else attended that weekend? The screen changed again. Most names were blurred. But one was clear, Diddy. This wasn't a vacation. It was a closed-door summit. Not social alignment, structural support. Every move she made, blackout calendars, PR synchronization, retainer payments, coordinated silence, it wasn't random. It was architecture built to ensure victims stayed unheard. Built to protect the throne, the prosecutor paused. And perhaps the most damning line in the logs isn't legal, it's emotional. She clicked the final slide. A screenshot, a leaked text from Kim's manager to Diddy's fixer during a media crisis. She's not worried. She knows how to weather headlines. Just tell Sean, Kim doesn't panic. Kim plans. That was it. Not just silence, control. Calculated distance, cold precision, flawless protection. The jury didn't flinch, they stared, finally seeing the full picture. Because this wasn't about Kim Kardashian, the influencer. This was about Kim Kardashian, the insulator. And for the first time, her power wasn't being admired. It was being dissected. The final day didn't feel like justice. It felt like a reckoning. Outside, reporters stood frozen. Inside, not a paper shuffled. Not a single phone lit up. Everyone knew this wasn't just the end of a trial. It was the unmasking of a machine. And its final scene wouldn't just belong to Diddy, it would belong to the silence of those who had power and still chose to say nothing. The judge entered quietly. He looked 10 years older than he had 10 days ago. His voice when it came was flat, grave. Final summary presentation. Prosecution may proceed. The prosecutor rose. No slideshow. No exhibits, just words. Your Honor, members of the jury, today marks the closing of a chapter this country was never prepared to read. In the weeks since this trial began, we've peeled back the image of fame, of luxury, of perfection, and we found what lay underneath. Manipulation, fear, and the most dangerous weapon of all, proximity to power. She turned to the room. We've seen the footage, heard the voice notes, read the emails, studied the off-grid retreats and calendar blocks. And piece by piece, we watched as Zhang Diddy Combs built not just an empire, but a fortress guarded by the silence of people who knew. She let it hang. Then, and no silence was more deafening than Kim Kardashian's, no one blinked. Kim Kardashian is not on trial, but her name, her actions, her digital fingerprints have become inseparable from the story. She listed it one by one, attended off-grid events, demanded NDA-level privacy, coordinated media redirection, transferred funds through shell entities, received pre-event briefings. And when victims surfaced, she said nothing. Not because she was confused, not because she was scared, but because she knew exactly how to stay clean. While staying close, the room was silent. We live in a culture, she said, that treats influence like innocence. That assumes the polished can't be complicit. But the room where harm happens doesn't look like a dungeon. It looks like a mansion, with wine glasses, with designer heels, and NDAs waiting at the door. She turned to Diddy. Mister? Combs is guilty, not just of his actions, but of the world he built to shield himself. Her voice softened, and let the record show, silence is not neutrality. It is participation. And Kim Kardashian's silence was not born from fear. It was born from control. She walked back to her desk. The judge spoke. This court recognizes the contributions and the consequences of all those named in these proceedings. The jury will now deliberate, but no one moved, because the trial was over, but the illusion was shattered. Guilt, in this new world, didn't always look like action. Sometimes it looked like proximity, sometimes it wore makeup, and smiled, and posted and said nothing. When the courtroom emptied for the final time, there were no cheers. No spin big enough to wash it away. Only a single, shared realization. The most powerful person in the room doesn't always pull the trigger. Sometimes they just know where the gun is kept and choose to walk on by, asterisk, asterisk.